Okay, good evening, everybody. My name's Shane Ohly. I'm the race director at the Montane Dragon's Back race and the Cape Wrath Ultra. Welcome to our webinar. We've had a whole series of these running every month for the year so far, and tonight we're going to be focusing on clothing and equipment. It is without a doubt the question we are asked most about by participants on email and social media. So I'll just cover a little bit of housekeeping while everyone comes into the webinar. So first of all, I'm in the Aria Events office in Kendal. Got some brilliant memorabilia from various events in the past behind me. This one, that's the 1992 Dragon's Back race. Helen Whitaker, then Diamantades and Martin Stone winning. It's a great picture that I like. I'm joined by my colleague Eleanor, also in the Lake District, but working from home tonight. So Eleanor is going to be answering questions on chat as they come in, sharing links to videos or web pages that are useful. I'm also totally delighted to introduce, we've got 3 guests tonight. So first, Kat Roberts is one of the Montane athletes, Montane ambassadors, and also an outdoor professional, an outdoor instructor working in North Wales. She was part of the Montane relay team at the Dragon's Back last year. We do a very special thing just for Montane as the sponsor and let them have a kind of 1 person per day relay team at the event, which really connects the brand and the staff with the Dragon's Back race. So Kat will have professional perspective on kit and kit choices, which will be fascinating to hear. And we're also joined by Lisa Watson. Lisa is a fantastic athlete. She has won the Dragon's Back race. She has won Cape Wrath Ultra, and she's got a massive, sorry, I can't, tripping up my own words, a massive amount of experience to share. And I'm sure we'll get a lot of insights about some of the kit choices the participants at the front of the race are making. We're also going to be joined by Stu Smith. Stu Smith is one of our long-standing event team members. I think he's all but been probably to every event that we have done. There's not quite every one. Stu Smith is another outdoor professional, and he's a mountain rescue team member, and he works on our response team at our events. So it's normally the response team who carry out the kit check when people register, and it's the response team that come out to help participants who get into difficulties during the event. Stu is very knowledgeable about kit, and he's going to be giving his insights as well. So hopefully, I think Stu's got some technical problems. Hopefully we'll get him into the webinar very shortly. So Lisa and Kat, we'll start off with some Q&A with yourself. And Kat, maybe I'll ask you first. Let's go to, I think, probably the most important bit of kit that we all carry in the hills is waterproofs. So what are the waterproof choices you make for a day out in the hills?
So when I'm running, I want to make sure that it's so it depends on the weather. I kind of have 2, well 3 options. So I kind of go with a super lightweight one, which is like, it packs away really, really tiny. And I'll use that on like the really nice weather days where it's blue sky, where we're expecting no rain whatsoever. I'll just carry it to make sure that I've got something there. And then otherwise, after that, I always focus on like tapered seams, preferably something which is breathable, definitely. Something that's got a big hood that I can then like kinch on the sides to make sure that no wind gets into my ears or into my face, that has a peak as well, and then something with just 2 pockets as well, so I can just pack away things I need to get to quickly, as well as my pack. So I tend to go for things like that. Then sometimes if the weather conditions are just absolutely horrendous, and then we get that unpredictable weather here in the UK especially, where 1 minute it could just be showers and all of a sudden we get this 60-50 mile-an-hour winds in there as well, then I will go for slightly more hard shell waterproof, so something in between a hard shell and a running waterproof, which sits in like a Gore-Tex as opposed to like a Gore-Tex Active, and that's a little bit less breathable, but it keeps me completely protected from the elements. So I'd rather sacrifice the breathability to feel a lot more protection on that sort of day.
Okay, that is great insights. Lisa, can we ask you the same question about your choices with waterproofs?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't got a huge amount more to add to what Kat has said. I do have my 3 options, my very, very thin one that I wouldn't expect to have to use, but more kind of acts as a, an emergency layer if, there is a freak shower on a nice sunny day. My in-between layer is probably what I'd normally carry on, unless the weather forecast was going to be absolutely horrendous, is what I would carry on most of these events, because you're out for long days. And you get, if something happens and you get, even if it's a nice day and you get cold, and a lot can change over the course of the day. And of course, in Dragon's Back and Cape Wrath, you're covering a lot of ground. The weather can be quite different from where you started to where you finish, and you're going up quite high as well. And I do, again, have a really thick, sort of more Gore-Tex hard shell layer that if I'm going to start in it and it's going to be horrible all day, then I'd carry that. I have also been known to layer waterproof, so you put one on top of the other. If you want to take your very light one and your medium one, it's going to get through one layer and then try and get through the other one as well. That does sometimes help if you want to carry something a little bit lighter or you're not sure what's going to happen. And with waterproof trousers, similarly, I think with waterproof trousers, you really want to make sure that they fit you and that they're comfortable to move around in. But those really tiny thin ones, although they seem really great for races and passing kit check, if you do need to use them on those rocky ground that you cover on, particularly Dragon's Back, they do tend to rip quite easily. So I tend to go for, again, a middling sort of layer with those waterproof trousers as well for those longer events. And I have worn them on the Dragon's Back as well this year. On day 5, it was very cold, so I do put them on. Another thing I sort of learnt this year was actually wearing a cap underneath your waterproof hood actually works really well when you're trying to move quickly in bad weather, and that's something that I'll be doing a bit more of now, because that worked really well this year, especially when you're going from sort of sun to showers. It does keep the rain out your face.
Excellent. I actually recorded a very little video about running day 2 about 10 days ago, which I think is on the Dragon's Back Instagram page. And even though it's quite a lovely sunny day, I had a cap with me as well. And I see that as a pretty core bit of your kit if you're in the mountains and you want protection from some poor weather. I think there's a couple of interesting things you both mentioned there. The layering the waterproofs is a fantastic approach that not many people seem to be aware of, and you can go with very lightweight waterproof and then a medium weight waterproof over the top, which can really work well to keep you dry in poor weather. A couple of months ago, Claire Gordon, who was the 3rd lady at Cape Wrath Ultra last year, she made this comment about having proper waterproofs for Cape Wrath. We had a great question of what do you mean by proper waterproofs, and Claire said, these are kind of like mountain waterproofs. These are Gore-Tex waterproofs designed to really for walkers or climbers for the whole day. And sometimes when the forecast is poor, that is what you need on the hill, even if you are kind of fast packing or running. So waterproof's probably the most important thing to get right. We'll talk about insulated jackets and maybe back to Kat as well. Perhaps you could talk about the kind of jacket that you would take on the hill for a day out.
Again, I have a few options too. Again, it all goes on the weather. I actually carry a super light one, and I have a backup one as well. So I carry this tiny. It's a Prism. It's actually a men's one, so it's a Prism. It's a pullover. It's quite an old one now, but I have it in a bigger size as well. So I carry that in my pack. So if I do get cold on the hill, I can chuck that over my waterproofs or my windproofs. And that tends to be like my last resort layer. And that's an insulated layer that dries really quickly as well. And if it gets wet, it maintains its warmth. So I always go for synthetic as well, not down on the hill, because as soon as down gets wet, it all clumps. As most people, if you don't know that already, down, synthetic over down, definitely. And otherwise, I tend to start using this one here that I'm wearing now. So this is a really nice summer one. And so it's a Fireball light, and so it's insulated in all the parts that you need to keep warm, so like your chest and then your arms and your shoulders, so it keeps all of those areas warm. But then those parts that you want to be breathable, like under the arms here, it's a nice stretchy fabric, and so it's super breathable out of the pits as well. So it's really good at getting rid of that excess heat when you're working hard, but it's also really good at keeping you warm when you do start to have your body temperature drop. So I tend to go for things like that, but always synthetic.
Brilliant. And Lisa, same question to you, and maybe you could draw upon some of your experiences like at the Northern Traverse. I know you've got something interesting to say about that.
Yeah, so I tend to, I mean, again, it always depends on the weather, but I have a couple of synthetic sort of insulated jackets that I will pretty much always carry one of. One of them is a very old Innovate quilted windproof pullover jacket, and the other one is slightly newer rotor hoodie, I think, with a hood. They're both sort of synthetic quilted jackets, both of which pass the ORA kit check. So on the nicer days, on Dragon's Back, I would carry one of those to pass kit check, and just because it's something that I always have in my bag, because you never know where you're going to go if you want to stop in a cafe if it's going to be horrible weather. But on Northern Traverse, I actually carried both of them because overnight, and I know I'm a person that gets cold. And overnight on the second night, the weather was really poor, and I ended up wearing both of them and all my waterproofs. And the last thing, I always get a bit nervous when I've got down to my last layer in my bag, and I actually had some quilted trousers as well of the same brand, which are really nice for camping, but I've never actually worn running before, but I knew it made me feel comfortable having them as the sort of last layer in my bag. And I was just warm enough, but I think it kind of shows that importance of having all those layers in the bag. And, you know, like Shane was saying, I was near the front of the race moving reasonably quickly overnight, but with all of those layers on. Beyond that, I tend to wear you know, a t-shirt and a mid layer of a varying thickness. I'm more likely to be wearing that while I'm running, and those synthetic jackets are in my bag as a you know, last resort layer to wear.
So what we saw at the Northern Traverse this year, we had 48 hours of really quite cold weather, particularly overnight, and most of the runners were wearing far more than what is described as the minimum mandatory kit. And I can't emphasize enough that it's the minimum. It's not the mandatory, it's the minimum kit that is mandatory. I'm going to kind of maybe step away from the ins and outs of kit now that Stu's joined us. Stu, can you hear us all right? And can we hear you?
Yeah, yes. Can you hear me?
Great. Yes, we can hear you. So I did a nice introduction. I said what a wonderful person you were. Oh, good. You did hear that.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was very flattered.
I'm going to tease everybody at this point and just say I'm going to talk a little bit about the why we have this kind of pretty hard focus on kit later, and explain a bit of the rationale for that. I'm also going to tease you with some potential changes that are coming to our kit list in the future. And this would be for our 2024 event, so don't panic. You know, this is some way off, but I kind of maybe want to highlight the direction of travel. But before I do all of that, Stu, I've explained how that response team member, which you're a member of our response team, often you do the kit check as well at registration. So perhaps you could just share some of your experiences of kit check with us.
Kit check, I guess, for some people is sort of the first bit of contact you get as you come through the door on a rare event. Obviously, kit check, and then you move on around the sort of room in instance. And people come in various formats. They come with the kit already loaded in the race pack, and then it's like a massive game of Tetris, trying to put it all back in again and sort of show you. I think for some people, without giving any secrets away, if you ask for a survival bag, it's generally at the bottom, so therefore everything comes out and you get to see everything all in a one. And then some people come along and they have this sort of IKEA style bag for life sort of style thing, and therefore it's not packed in any particular order, and you just rifle through it. It's like a lucky dip, really, then, and you just sort of put your hand in and ask for the stuff that you're looking for on the mandatory kit, really. Some surprising stuff I've seen. Oh, I think there's some American guy, you might remember him, Shane. He came along with a sort of poncho looking thing and sort of said, "This is my waterproof." it wasn't strictly even a poncho, if that makes sense. I know there's a lot of European runners who sort of using ponchos, and possibly with good effect as well, actually. And some there's certainly one person that I can remember from England who puts a poncho over their waterproofs, and I overheard, I think it was Kat sort of saying about, oh no, Lisa was saying about doubling up the waterproofs, and certainly a poncho sort of does that sort of thing as well. Really. I've seen all sorts of weird things, really, from tiny phones that look like they go into prisons. Not saying where they are in prisons. So I've got this guy to try and make a call, and his sort of fat fingers did every button all at once, basically. And it was about that sort of size.
I've got one.
They're tiny things, aren't they? I don't even, I certainly couldn't do it. And certainly if I've got cold hands and I'm gibbering away on the side of a track on the hillside somewhere, I certainly couldn't make a call with that. But it says on the mandatory kit list to carry a mobile phone that's charged, and I'm sure a pigeon would be easier, to tell the truth.
Yeah, maybe the rules should be changed there to a mobile phone that can be used with your gloves on.
Oh man, we used to do.
I don't know.
Like that.
Maybe
With,
2024 changed. Don't worry, not for this year.
We used to have competitions like in Clackegg or Old Dungeon Gill where we had Dachsteins on and we had to wear them all night. That meant going to the bar, carrying a pint back, all sorts of things. Dachsteins are big woolly mitts for those people who don't know about Dachsteins. And you had to undo your sweets with them, buy a pint, go to the toilet, whatever it is. With your mitts on all night, or you forfeited a round.
I'm just thinking about one of the bizarre kit check experiences, and I think it was Cape Wrath Ultra last year, maybe the year before, where we had an Israeli runner who turned up with no waterproof jacket, no waterproof trousers, but he did have a waterproof skort. Is that right?
Yeah.
And he was like, well, I've got a waterproof skort. And we're like, okay, I don't think you've quite understood Scottish weather here.
No. And I guess that goes to, we've had some American people coming in, some Malaysians and things like that, who come over and just don't know about our sort of maritime climate. That it's just, I think you mentioned the cold on the Northern Traverse just a minute ago, and it's just the rain and the cold that sort of creates some of the problems for a lot of people, really. And being sort of acclimatized again also helps. Never acclimatized to Scottish rain and Scottish midges.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So maybe we can move on to shoes, and I will jump back to Kat, because I think if you're thinking about the kit you're going to use for Dragon's Back, Cape Wrath, Northern Traverse, these long kind of expedition style races, you probably need to start from your feet up, because your footwear is the most important thing. And Kat, perhaps you could share some insights of maybe about the terrain and also the shoes that you would choose.
Yeah, and so I've run a lot of the first 3 days, because I live in Snowdonia, so that's kind of like my playground. So I know that area really well. But on the relay, I actually ran day 4, and it actually caught me off guard a little bit because I'd never done day 4 before. I've never been into the Elan Valley, and there's actually a lot of road. So if you're really good on like road and like flat terrain, well, not even flat, because there's still a lot of elevation, and it's really runnable. So I was actually wearing a pair of, I think it was Innovate Trailfly, and which was good for most of the terrain, and they just about held off on the road. But apart from that, I definitely wouldn't have chose those for that day if I was doing the whole thing. So I've learned a little bit of an experience and a bit of an insight there. Knowing what I know now, I've definitely taken the Trailfly 270 for the first 3 days, because I find that they're really nice and comfortable on rock. And I'm someone that likes to feel the rock underneath as well. So I wear 0 drop and just feel a lot more confident moving on ground like that. Otherwise, for the rest of it, I'd probably want to look at something with a lot more padded underneath it. So I'd probably go for finding a shoe that fits for you. So definitely go and try loads of shoes on, and see what fits you first. But you want something with a little bit more cushioning, I'd go for. So I work in Joe Brown's as well. in an outdoor shop, so I'm surrounded by lots of shoes, which is really nice. So it means I get to try a lot of different things on. And yeah, definitely go and try. Otherwise, I'd probably go for something like, so I actually bought my Scarpa Rubella runs with me as well for that week, and for some reason just chose not to wear them, which I wish I'd have worn those now. So definitely have 2 pairs of shoes that you can train in and get really comfortable in moving on rock, and especially for like days 4, 5 and 6. Day 5 has a lot of rocky terrain again, so find something which is comfortable for transitioning onto different sort of terrains as well, and get used to that in those shoes, and find that really comfy pair of shoes for that race is what I'd say. Shoes are very personal.
Yeah, they are very personal. Lisa, perhaps your insights. I mean, you from Dragon's Back and Cape Wrath and Northern Traverse. Take your pick. What's worked for you, or maybe what's your approach to choosing the right pair? How do you get there?
Oh, I mean, it's really tricky. I mean, as Kat said, you've got such a variety of terrain on Dragon's Back and the Northern Traverse and all of these events. It is really difficult, and it's interesting hearing what Kat says about the trail flies, because actually I wore them for days 3 to 6 of Dragon's Back and absolutely loved it. Whereas I started off in I think rock lights. I think for me, I'm used to fairly non-cushioned shoes, and so and I always used to wear rock lights for absolutely everything. But I found on Northern Traverse, my feet got a little bit sore with the sort of lack of padding and the harder ground, you know, the road sections towards the middle and the end. On Dragon's Back, I think it depends what you're good at as well. I'm fairly good at the sort of rough and wet terrain and not so good on rocks. So I wanted a shoe that I knew would stick really well on rocks. I knew I could handle the kind of the rough and slippery terrain, and the Trailfly had enough grip for that. And then on the road, sort of harder road sections and the hard packed trail on day 6, I found they had enough cushioning for me. But really, you just need to train in them. You need to go for long runs in your shoes, and you need to go on all sorts of different terrain and know what works for you. I don't love a lot of shoe faff. I think it's great to take a second pair of shoes in case something goes wrong, and I did keep them in my drop bag for the middle of the day in case I got a blister or something that needed to change. But for me, I prefer not to have to worry about that and go with my A shoe and then another pair of shoes that you know is good, that's going to work. But it's got to fit you, and you've got to go for long runs in it, and there's not really any other way around that. So
perfect. I think as some of our kind of listeners, guests this evening might know, Scarpa have just joined us, or kind of unisex Stu. Some of our Scarpa have just joined us as a sponsor for the Dragon's Back and the Great Lakeland 3-day. And I've been fortunate to have a whole stack of Scarpa shoes to run in and test. And I've run day 1 and 2 this year of Dragon's Back in some Spin Ultras. And there, I would normally run in something a bit less cushioned with a more aggressive sole. But I've kind of actually quite enjoyed having a more supportive cushioned shoe. And okay, it doesn't quite have the same grip as a fell shoe, but it's definitely more comfortable for those long kind of 60k days when your, comfort is important. Stu, do you want to add something?
Yeah. I've just noticed that some. I think Ian has just asked a similar question. I was also going to mention your Scarpa shoes and things like that, and slightly more comfort shoes. So I used to use Mutants quite a lot, and even Mutants. And the question that Ian put on there was what I was going to ask as well. Do you, Kat and Lisa, sort of go a size or half a size up on your second pair of shoes throughout the week on those longer events?
No, again, I'd make sure that I'd trained in them as well. So I got and done loads of mileage in my shoes and got used to them. So your feet would have swelled in them whilst you're training in them again. So I do the exact same process for my spare pair of shoes as well. So I wouldn't worry about trying to go up a size personally. I'll just make sure that they're comfortable, and if my feet do swell in them, when they do swell in them, they're comfortable whilst doing that as well.
Yeah, for me, I've not taken shoes that are half a size up, but I've got a lot of experience doing long runs now, and I know that doesn't really happen to my feet. Obviously, anything can happen. You can prepare for as many eventualities as you like, I suppose. But all I can say is go for some long runs and see what happens to your feet.
I think the theme that we come back to in all of these webinars is go for long runs using the kit that you plan to use on the event, and don't bring new stuff to the event. You should arrive at the event with you know, jackets, base layers, shorts, skirts, shoes, whatever it is you're wearing, that you're really comfortable and you know what, we know how they work for you. I'm going to move on to our next question, and I'm going to talk about the pack choices, pack size, and I guess the first thing I would say, and well, maybe Stu is probably thinking the same thing that I am, and along the lines of people who come to registration and kit check and they go, "Oh, I can't fit it in my pack." So Stu, just give us an anecdote about that first of all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I sort of go through some of the forums and things like that. I think I'm not trolling it as such, because I like to. I'm interested, genuinely interested. But I guess that's the sort of common terminology. But it's interesting to sort of see that some people sort of say, I can't fit my insulated layer in, for example. Get a bigger pack. That's the simple thing. Most people are sort of managing. I know Shane. When I've been doing mountain marathons and I've been quizzing Shane and people like Jim Mann, and I asked them what sort of size pack and weight pack that they're taking, and Shane always seems a little bit aggrieved that Jim Mann can get down to about 3.5K and Shane's about 4.1 or something like that. Is that about right?
That's exactly right.
And so, you know, and then obviously that's it. That's for me is way up at the sharp end sort of thing. I'm a little sort of short, fat bloke, and my kit's bigger than most people's anyway, I guess. But just get a bigger bag. If you can fit it in easily, it'll come in easy out, easy in, easy out, and you're not faffing about. It's not like Tetris on the side of the hill and it all blows away. You know, if that means that you change from a 12 litre to a 15 litre, so be it. If you change from a 15 to a 20 litre, so be it. Just go with it. And as the theme seems to be developing, practice with it.
Okay. Pat, would you like to add something to the bag choices?
Yes, I'm kind of with Stuart here. So because I've got used to training with a lot of weight, and that's because my working running pack carries all of my safety kit for myself, but I also have to take extra for clients as well. So I've got used to training with quite a big bag. So now even when I go on my personal runs, I no longer, unless I know it's just going to be a short day where I can get away with like a bum pack, I very regularly go with anything less than a 15 litre pack. So I've actually brought my work running pack is this pack here, and it is I think it's 20 litre, this one. Yeah, so it's a 20 litre, so I tend to use this one for my work pack, and then otherwise I go for a 15 litre. Yeah, so I no longer skimp on kit. And I think it's just so I get used to taking, so I've been working with a local club on mountain safety and navigation, and within that, most of them don't carry a layer on the hill, so they'll carry a waterproof jacket, but then because they just carry their little bum bags, they'll just carry literally a waterproof one little soft flask of water and a little bit of like a bar or something for the day. So none of them carried any personal kit for if they got into trouble. So you always have to consider all that as well. So I've just got used to carrying lots of kit.
Stu, I'll come back to you in a moment, but Lisa, perhaps you could share your insights as well.
Yeah, so I use a Salomon 12 litre bag, which I love because there's pockets all over it. It distributes the weight really nicely. If it's a little bit less full, it doesn't bounce around too much, but you can generally squidge loads of stuff into it. And I've used that for both Dragons Back races and Cape Wrath Ultra. For Northern Traverse, I could get all of my kit into it, but I chose to go to a 20 litre bag because I knew that some of those sections, particularly the overnight section, was going to be really long and potentially slow, and I wanted to carry my second synthetic jacket on that, on the overnight sections to make sure that I was going to be warm enough. And I just felt that I needed a little bit more space to be able to get things in and out easily when I was tired and not lose things and drop things all over the place. And I think actually the Vale of York section I wanted to carry a bit more water as well, and that was a bit easier to do in a slightly bigger bag. I am probably a little bit of an over preparer. I always think that I'm going to move a bit faster if I've got the extra bit of kit that I need versus the amount it will slow me down by carrying the extra weight. And so I probably do like train with a little bit more weight than I need to carry. But again, that's just, as long as you're carrying the minimum kit and you know what you're used to, then I guess that sort of question is up to you.
Stu, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I think just off the back of what Kat and Lisa were saying there, then there's been the video floating around that hopefully gets shared again and again of one of the previous Cape Wrath winners, Ian Stewart and his mates up on the hill, and they out there testing how long it takes really to sort of get really, really cold. I have done this sort of thing in the past, but it's never been videoed, and I've tested it a few times, and I really sort of rate Ian's video there. Is it on the website at the moment?
So it's on our kind of overarching kit guidance article on the Arena Events website. I'm sure Eleanor's probably already shared the link, but if not, she can do again, I'm sure.
It's very worthwhile watching. It saves you, as in all our participants on the Teams meeting tonight, it saves you having to go out and replicate what they've done. There's no spoiler alerts. It is what it is, sort of thing, and hopefully you'll get an idea of what both Kat and Lisa were saying, and myself when I'm working. I end up sort of taking a little bit more kit for the what if scenarios.
Yeah. So both Stu and myself are mountain rescue team members and have done a lot of mountain rescue work over many years, and my personal approach to being in the mountains has definitely changed because I have learned that accidents happen and nobody expects an accident to happen to them when they set out for the day. And now if I'm just training or personal run with friends, I always carry a little bit extra. And the thing that I always put in now is that actually a very small group shelter, which can be game changing if you have to be stationary. But that said, if I'm out to race, and I think my best racing days are quite a long way behind me now, but I guess when I was being competitive in mountain marathons and you want every gram to count.
You and me both, Shane.
I guess the point is when you see those elite runners with smaller packs, they know that they are trained well enough that they will be able to run for 8 or 9 hours without stopping. And it's the fact that they're moving so quickly, which will give them the heat, which means that they can run with lighter kit. But the majority of us, and I include myself in this category now, that is for sure, it does not matter if your jacket is 50 grams or 100 grams lighter or heavier, because that's not what's going to make the difference. And actually, the reality is you will be moving a bit slower. You'll be walking up some of the hills. If the weather is poor, you will need better kit. So I think it's important that participants don't look at the elite runners and go, oh, that's the model for me, because it's not. Right, shall we move on? Seeing as we're talking about, long days in the hills, maybe Kat, how do you make sure you've got everything in the bag that you need for a day out in the hills? What are the thought process that you go through for the kind of all the all-weather days?
Yeah, so always check the weather. I like to make a brief plan of what I'm going to do that day, and have like loads of options within it. So I'll make sure that, I'll see how long I'm going to be out for. I'll look at the weather, and then from there I'll start to pack my kit. So I always do everything the night before, and because I've got into habits before where I've gone in the next morning and you just end up shoving loads of stuff in, and then you end up taking most of it for a run because you don't end up touching it, and you're like, oh, I didn't actually need that in the end, or you end up forgetting something that would have been really, really handy for that day. So I'll plan everything the night before, have a look. So just prep everything, and then I'll double check it the next morning before I go. So my thought process is waterproofs always, and then I always pack my bag in the order that I think I'm going to need everything, with the things that I'm not hoping to use will always go at the bottom, and the things that are most important will go on the top. So I just keep my waterproofs on the top, and then I've got loads of snack pockets, like Lisa was saying in her pack, like loads of little pockets for snacks. I'll always put my favourite snacks, obviously, in the most accessible parts, and then within the back, I'll put my less favourable snacks, so I know I've got backup throughout the day too. And then I'll base my food as well, and based on how long I'm planning on being out. And then with hydration, I'll always like to plan water streams where possible into the route, so I know that if I drink all of my water throughout the day, because obviously you don't know, some days you'll drink too much because it's super hot and you're not expecting it to be, and you need that water resources along the way. So I'll plan things like that into my route as well. And sometimes I'll plan a nice little coffee shop in there as well, so I can go and pick up a coffee on route.
Brilliant, brilliant. And Lisa, perhaps we can ask you the same question about kind of what your pack for a day out in the hills looks like.
Do you want me to answer it in a general way, or about this sort of specific sort of each day on these multi-day events?
Well, why don't you do both? Because I think there is a difference between what you might go and train. And let's remember, everybody here is going to spend many more hours doing training runs than they are going to be at the event. So share both thoughts with us.
Yeah, I suppose, I mean, in some ways they're fairly similar. So like I said, I tend to keep the majority of the same kit. I have a little dry bag that I always have, my hat, my thick gloves, and my synthetic layering, and that pretty much lives in my running bag all the time. And also a foil bag, because it's so often a kit check thing. I like to keep it in there. I know where it is. I've got my whistle, my compass live in my bag. Then I suppose the things that are variable are the other layers I'm going to wear. I'm going to have a bunch of other mid layers if it's going to be colder and I think I'm going to be running in them, or am I just going in my t-shirt and a thin long sleeve, for example? How long am I going to be out for? How much food do I need? And that's something, again, that's really variable depending on how fast you're going to be moving, where you're going to be going. Are you going past some snack stops? Are you going for an all-day picnic? Are you going for a fasted tempo run? That really depends on what do you want to eat. The map, where are you going? Which map do you want to take? Make sure you've not got loads of old maps left in your bag from previous days, and clearing out all those sort of bits of rubbish that end up getting left in your bag. And like Kat says, I always like to kind of keep my bag mostly prepared or done the night before, but then check it again in the morning, because you can never remember, did you eat that last cereal bar you had from last time, or is it still in there? Like I say, I always like to have a little bit more food and stuff than what I'm expecting, because you never know when you're going to end up on an adventure, on a navigational adventure. So I do like to be a little bit more prepared. And do I need to take a head torch? When's it going to get dark? What's the likelihood of you being out? In the winter, I'll pretty much always have it in there, because you just unless you're going for like a 10k at 9 a.m, you don't know how long your day is going to take sometimes if you're going out for a long time. And another thing is check that if it can lock, lock so it doesn't turn on automatically in your bag, then that's a really good thing to check that is done. I also tend to take a very small first aid kit. There are a few things that I have, again, that live in my bag. A couple of paracetamol, normally some tape, normally something absorbent. A lot of things you need to just get off the hill, but there are some things that will slow you down if you can't just fix there and then. You've cut your hand and it's bleeding a little bit. It's not necessarily going to end your run, but you do need to close it so that you're not, bleeding all over the place or can't touch anything. So yeah, tape and something absorbent is probably the minimum. It's paracetamol if you turn your ankle. Again, that's personal preference of how much you want to carry there. And then on the events, I like to do all my kit faff when I get back and I've still got some brain energy left. I think as soon as you stop, everything can kind of stop working in your head. So I tend to get back, get dry, get some food to eat, and then I sit down, getting myself sorted and get my kit packed for the next day. I like to have a full separate set of camp stuff that I use in the camp. So I have a separate head torch for using in camp. So I never need to touch my head torch that's going out in the daytime. It's always going to stay in my bag. I'm not going to risk losing it or not putting it back in my bag and not passing kit check the next morning. Like I say, my spare layers, they'll always stay in that bag. But anything wet, I'll change over, move over, make sure that my kit's lying out to dry, take all my wrappers out, throw them away, put my next lot of food in. I also like to pay attention to where that water point is the next day. When are you going to get access to your drop bag? It's not always perfectly halfway. Sometimes it's a little bit after halfway, sometimes it's a little bit before. And before I go to the event, I sort my food out into, this is day one morning, this is day one afternoon. That's going to be in the top of my drop bag. As soon as I get there, I can grab my drop bag and put it in my bag. Obviously there's some, sometimes you might be really sick of this and I might do a little bit of switching over of food, but I do try and do that as much in advance as I can, so you can limit that amount of brain energy you have to use in the evenings, and you can just focus on eating and sleeping, because they're the things that are going to get you refreshed for the next day. But yeah, as much as I can, I'll sort that out the night before. And there's always a weather forecast out by the participants tent, so you can check But you know, unless anything's wildly different, I'll try and keep the kit as the same as possible and not do too much faffing.
Okay, so I think it'd actually be interesting to maybe talk about the camp kit as well. So I'll kind of give you a bit of a warning, and we'll come to that in a moment. But maybe Stu, I mean, do you have any anecdotes? You've got so much experience of kind of good, bad tips, I guess, when it comes to kit.
We just talked about Jim Mann there previously on his mountain marathons. There's been some, I think Lisa's just mentioned about being navigationally challenged and having an extra bar of food in your bag, and I think that's really, really useful. There is an acronym, STOP, S-T-O-P, which stands for if you're a bit lost, stop. S is stop, T is think about it, always observe, and P is plan what you're going to do next. And I think as soon as you stop, put some food in you, because there's something going wrong a little bit, you know, a bit hyperglycemic or whatever. So put some food in. I think Jim, he suffered a little bit because we sort of took the mickey out of him slightly. He had a list written on the back of his big Artleap bag. So 1 to 5, what he did first, what he did second, what he did. And by day 5, as it was on the Dragon's Backs there, then he seemed to have like a list of 10 things that people had written on. Not always very helpful, but it was very funny. So having that list, as Lisa was saying about brain power, using the brain power that's left at the end of the day to finish that before it sort of turns into a bit of faffy time and you're just shuffling kit around for no particular reason, is to sort that list out. If you're a listy sort of person, get that sorted out and put it onto your bag somewhere. I think Kat sort of said about when on a work bag, it's like what comes out first. I think if I had a work bag that was ideal, it would probably be sort of coffin shaped on my back, because I want everything to sort of come out first. That comes back to that thing about having your survival bag at the bottom. If I want to survive with getting it out reasonably early and getting into it, whichever way up, upside down or right way up. and there's never, it's always a compromise really. I think whichever way you put your kit. Shane and I have I guess quite a lot of other people, you know, we can have discussions about, we've had a 5-glove day working up in Scotland, or a 7-glove day, whatever it is, because you've gone through so many different pairs of gloves. Just working on a day up in Scotland or in the lakes, you know, or even in Wales, that thing. There's just so many tiny things. There was a phrase that Dave Brailsford from Sky Cycling used, and I thought it was a brilliant thing. It was why is British cycling so good at the moment, despite them all taking salbutamol and all that sort of thing. And it was why is British cycling so good? And he said, oh, we've got very round wheels, that's why. And the French went off and went, ooh, our wheels not very round. And of course they're all professional cycling teams. But he was talking about marginal gains, and he was talking about all those little things that they do, which all then add up to the big picture stuff to make your expedition race and your adventure on these events go smoothly. Yeah, I've been talking about various bits of kit. I'm just going to mention this because I did ask earlier, and if you might be able to see that. Can you see that without the light? It's a book called Keeping Dry and Staying Warm. It's a bit of a brain training sort of book. It was put together by Mike Parsons, who was the owner of Carrymore. And after 2008 Borrowdale OMN Mountain Marathon, there was lots and lots of kit talk and about keeping dry and staying warm and sort of performance layering. It's well worth a read. It's not a read of a book from cover to cover, but it is certainly a bit of brain training sort of thing. And there's one really, really sort of contributor to the book who's absolutely brilliant.
Okay, so stop plugging yourself. So I'm gonna just talk about like top tips, and then I'm going to ask Kat and Lisa if they've got some kind of top tips, and then we'll go back to some camp questions. But I think one of the things that I've learned over the years, again, personal experience in the hills, is if I think about something more than once, like, am I a bit cold? Do I need to eat? Then the second time it pops into my head, do something about it. You absolutely, even if it means you have to stop, you do something about it. And it's kind of, I would probably say the only time when you do things immediately is when it's navigation. So if the thought pops into your head that something's not right, you just stop immediately. You just stop and you go, okay. When you get that funny feeling when you're navigating, particularly I'm really thinking about map and compass navigation here, you just stop straight away and make sure you've got it right. So stop early. Basically, if you think something's going awry, stop and sort it out early. Kat, go on, top tips from yourself.
So one of mine is actually just like yours there, Shane. I actually once got told, so back in like my earlier starting of like mountain running days, where I'd have all of my kit in my pack and I'd be there like, oh yeah, I'm getting really cold, but I'm just going to power on because I don't want to stop. And then I'd get really hungry and then I'd be like, yeah, I don't want to stop. I'm going to just keep going. And then I got told, be bothered. So that's kind of carried that with me since then. So every single time I'm out on the hill now, as soon as I start to think of something, or like as soon as it pushes into the back of my head, because I'm like, oh no, actually I can keep going, I'll be like, no, Kat, you need to be bothered. And then I'll start doing all those things that have started to come into my mind where I'll be like, yeah, I need food now. Okay, be bothered, you need to eat. So I tell myself to be bothered all the time, basically, with all of that sort of stuff. And I think that elaborates onto what you were just saying then, Shane. And otherwise, I also carry now my own little pouch. So I have my first aid kit in my pack, but I also carry my own little personal one. And I call it like my little, like, my more, how could you call it? More like fancy kit? The things that just make things a little bit more luxurious and a little bit more comfortable when you're feeling really uncomfortable. So I carry in there like a sun cream. I'll carry some sort of a nicer gel, which I'll keep in case I really need it. And then I'll carry like a nice lipsol. Some of my lips are getting really chapped in the really bad weather. It's just something to make it a bit more comfortable. And then it's like a glider gel for chafing. And I always make sure that that's on me somewhere. And those are like my little essentials that make that really uncomfortable experience more comfortable. So that's another sort of like top tip I like to carry. So if you have those things that you think while you're out actually just be a little bit more bearable, then just keep them in a little pouch that's really, really easy to access. And then I always carry buffs as well. I love buffs. They're either on my head, on my wrist, and that's just because they also make a really good safety first aid piece of kit, even if it's not for yourself. If you come across someone that may have like rolled an ankle and they haven't got tape accessible, just hand them your buff and I can wrap that up and it just gives them a little bit more protection. So those are probably a few top tips there.
Brilliant. Lisa, how about yourself?
Well, all of those things, obviously. I think eat more. If you're feeling grumpy, eat more. Have something that you really like that you can always get down. Mine's chocolate. I can always eat chocolate. So I always carry a little extra bar of chocolate. The map isn't wrong. You don't know where you are. If you're looking at the map thinking it's not matching up, you need to think a bit harder. It's never wrong. I make that all the time. And the other one is just simply like, look at the view. Remember, you're there for fun. We're in these beautiful places because we want to be there and have a nice time. Don't worry if you need to move a little bit slower. If you need to get some joy back, it will, take it all in and enjoy yourself.
Absolutely. I think Kat made some good comments about luxury items, and I would say one or two things I might choose to take would be some like Body Glide lube stuff in case you get some chaffing, because that is just so unpleasant. And then Lipsol as well. Some of them are lips, because mine will dry out, particularly on a second or third day in hills. My lips will start to dry. Okie doke. So let's talk about camp kit. And just to keep it easy for me, I'm basically going round the screen clockwise. So that is Kat, Lisa, Stu. So when we ask questions, so I'm not going to play with the system to working. I'm Kat. You spent some nights at the Dragon's Back camp. What would you say you observed, or what worked for you?
So one thing I observed was there was a lot of sliders and lots of sandals around. So I think that, and I personally, I love them and I think they're super comfortable. So I think that there seems like a really good piece of kit. Lisa can obviously elaborate a lot further on what she sees because she was there and she was doing it. And let's see. Yeah, everyone seemed to have their own system. From a lot of the people that I spoke to, the participants, they all had their own personal system. So as soon as they went into camp, they started to tick off their list. Again, going back to what the other guys were saying, and they all had their own individual way of doing it. At the end of the long days, for all of us as staff, it was just like comfy clothes. Like I just tucked a pair of joggers on under my waterproof jacket as well. So my joggers on and sandals and wellies for most days as well for us as well in the mud. But
Lisa, how about yourself?
Yeah, so like I said before, I had a separate set of kit that so I didn't need to ever dip into my running kit bag in camp, so I didn't have to worry about having, you know, where's my head torch gone now, sort of situation. So I had a separate head torch. I had my kind of apocalypse waterproofs for camp as well, so I didn't need to, you know, touch my running ones. But then I still had them with me in case there was a really, really terrible day. I would have taken them on the hill with me, so I knew that I had them with me. I had some little mini wellies for my camp shoes, so I could sort of get my running shoes off, dry my feet out, put some really big comfy socks on, and put them in my wellies, but also easy to sort of slip on and off in and out of the tent. Yeah, I mean, nothing more complicated about that. Just comfy clothes and things that are going to stay separate to my running kit, essentially.
I think, Stuart, you've probably got some anecdotes to share here as well.
Oh yeah, I can only echo what Kat and Lisa have said there. Having that sort of modular system is just fantastic. I remember somebody it was quite a big up near Inchynadamp on Cape Wrath, and there was a huge puddle in the middle of the field there, and people were going in there to wash their feet so that they could go wash their feet and then go to the medic tent to get their feet taped up and things like that. It just became like a big bird bath really in the middle of the campsite. So things like wellies are super useful. I'm a bit of a Crocs fan, and you can get sort of Crocs style of wellies, which are similar to what Lisa has. You know, they don't have to be super knee length waded or anything like that. But there is, I see people sort of wandering around in all sorts of various states of attire, from just underwear, bra and knickers and underpants to, which must be comfy, obviously, I guess, because they wouldn't do it otherwise, would they? To people sort of having a dip in the sea, because that salt water thing is just sort of helpful for them, and just that little bit of reflection time, just to take, you know, we're talking about camp clothing, taking a little bit of time out for yourself to actually sort of, what's the phrase, reconnect with yourself. You know, you've just done a physically hard day, and to get all the planets lined up in your head and all the rest of it sort of thing is just a really nice thing to do, and then sort of discuss the postmortem over a cup of tea in the big mess tent. I think taking that time out and just reiterating what Kat and Lisa have sort of said previously. I've ended up taking a brolly, but I'm sure that you're not going to go running with a brolly. You know, if
So
you're
I was going to say,
on the camp team.
That's the difference between being a participant and being on the crew. So as a crew, I have an umbrella with me as well, because it's so useful to be able to walk around the site from a tent to a tent and not get your waterproof soaked every time. I
don't know how many people are sort of sitting in on here who are sort of crew members as well. And as Lisa said about the biblical sort of rain that comes through, having that sort of second set of waterproofs is really useful. Just for your own comfort level, really. And know where things are, which pocket. If you've opened a pocket, close it up again. You know, the amount of times that even on day one, the lost property is starting to collect up. We even had maps found on day 2 or 3, which are mandatory kit in lost property. Write your name on things, so you're going to get it back.
Yeah. I think what I'm going to do at this point, I'm going to talk a little bit about the theory of why we have a real focus on good quality minimum mandatory kit at the races, and then actually I'm going to bounce some questions to Stu, who can, I know he's got some anecdotes of when it's gone wrong for participants in his role as a response team member. So first of all, if you're really interested in a deep dive into the theory, we published an article on the Arrear Events website at the beginning of this week about risk management. So that's something I've written, kind of explaining how accidents happen, crises develop and disasters happen when a Swiss cheese model of circumstances occur. So it might be an inexperienced participant who doesn't have the right kit, and the weather forecast is poor, and the event organisers don't make any moderations to the course. There's no response capability within the event, and all of a sudden you have all of these things align that allow a bad accident to happen. And I think if you have a quick read of that, well, it's not a quick read, it's probably a 10-minute read, that might give you some insights into why the kit check is quite important. And also, it's not just the kit check when you register. We do kit checks throughout the event on Dragon's Back and Cape Wrath. Why that's an important part of the kind of safety management system within the event. And also, and I think this is really important, I don't want to be organising an event for the lowest common denominator. So when we are thinking about the participants and what weather that they can sustain on a hill, I'm not trying to calibrate the event to the weakest person. I'm trying to calibrate it to the average. And some of the decisions we make, and I know Eleanor, I always ask you to post this video, but just post the video, Cape Wrath Ultra day 4 last year, when it just rained really heavily all day. And somebody said to me, I can't believe we went ahead with the weather. I think you should have cancelled the day and it was all too dangerous. And I was like, that's kind of 5 out of 10 on my scale of bad weather. And we want our participants to have the right kit. So if I get it wrong with my judgment, or if they bite off a bit more than they can chew, they can actually safely evacuate off the hill. So that's putting on a synthetic layer, hats and gloves on, waterproofs. And whilst it might be uncomfortable, you're not going to get cold enough that you can't carry on walking. So that's some of the principles of why we want you as participants to have that different range of kit. And things like the survival bag, the part that plays in the system is if you become stationary. If you've got all of your clothing on and then you get in a survival bag, yes, it might be uncomfortable. Yes, you're going to get cold, but you're not going to die. Not in the British Hills in summer conditions anyway, not from hypothermia. So, Stu, why don't you share what comes to mind when we talk about your experience on the response team at the events?
Oh, it's quite a big, broad spectrum. I've heard things that sort of on the event, on the Dragon's Back. There's a tracker, and the SOS button's activated. It's bells and whistles here, there, and everywhere with emails and phone calls. And this happened once, and we all sort of got a little bit excited. It was very early. It was day 1, and then James Taylor, who was looking after the tracking time at the time, there sort of said, it's not even 8 o'clock yet, so nobody started. It's just 2 people hugging, and they just caught their SOS button. So it was good little practice for us, just to sort of see how it all worked and things like that. These things do get tested, obviously, during the event and before the event, and obviously on that one. We tend to think of bad weather as always being sort of wet, cold, miserable, minging, horizontal or vertically coming up rain. Equally, bad weather is Dragon's Back a couple of years ago was very, very hot, 27 plus degrees in North Wales. So that then means that it's a different sort of set of kit. Where Lisa and Kat were talking about checking the weather, check the weather before you go to the event. At least a week before you go to the event, you've got an idea of what's going on. But we've had everything from we went with a phone call to one gentleman, and he was quite rightly put into his bivy bag. He was quite ill, really. He was quite hypothermic, and he ended up being put into his bivy bag. But unfortunately, he'd been put in his bivy bag in a minor little river, so he was slowly filling up with water into his bivy bag. And when we got there, we had to sort of shift him to move him out there. We had to use a helicopter for that one. So we've had everything from bugs to helicopters, really. That's a great little title, isn't it, really?
Bugs to helicopters.
Bugs to helicopters, yeah.
So, Stu, I think at Northern, sorry, just to interrupt you, at Northern Traverse this year, are you going to talk about the person?
Yeah,
It's a good story.
To be honest, there was a couple of people. We got to one person. He'd sent a message through. He did all the right things. He'd sort of sent a message through and said, "I've got hallucinations. I'm feeling really cold. I've sort of sat down a little bit." A few nights in this, I think it was now, sort of middle of the country in the section Lisa was talking about, having double thermal layers, insulated layers, and anyway, we got up. Well, we were sent out at 2 o'clock in the morning. It was very, very cold, -6, -7 or something like that. Well, very cold. And anyway, I sort of walked around. He walked himself to a village. I walked around to try and find him, and he walked towards me. And I thought, not that cold, eh? If you can walk towards me, really. So we put him in the vehicle, turned the heating up, cooked him a little bit, and took him back. And that was like an SOS button as well. So I think that Shane's take on the SOS button is it's like threatening to yourself or to somebody, somebody you've come across. Certainly, walking towards me is not life threatening. It might be for me if he runs over me or something like that. But yeah, and we had another one. Somebody had phoned in. They'd gone into a house. She's sort of doing the right thing again. They used the landline, which was a microwave dish on the side of the house, because it's such a remote place. There's no phone reception, and we went to them, and they're sitting there having a cup of tea. Not quite very, very cold as we were first told. And the nice thing was that the doctor who was with me on the response team, so we sort of double up with doctors and healthcare professionals. He recognised that the farm that was next door was the Yorkshire Farm, I think it's called, on Channel 5. It's just like a mass of children all over the place, these feral children. And it was just really, really funny just to sort of go and see these guys. What they were trying to manoeuvre a gate, so like a 4-wheel drive quad thing in this farmyard, and it just looked like Austin Powers, but with feral children everywhere, you know. It's fantastic to sort of see. So those bits are the nice bits, but then sort of searching around for people for hours when we're trying to sort of go out and encourage people to try and keep moving that little bit rather than sort of sit and go to ground. That's sometimes quite difficult, really, just to try and, well, they've got trackers on, but obviously, as you know, mobile phone signal is not brilliant. Was that the fault that you meant on the Northern Traverse there, Shane?
To be honest, you've made the points that were good. I think I guess we've seen people retire from our events and be assisted by our response team, and you have these crazy situations where these participants, generally the problem is they're getting cold and wet, and when you respond to the incident, you find that their insulated layer is still in their rucksack, or they haven't put their waterproof trousers on, and you just think to yourself, come on guys, you
Yes.
need to be bothered, as Kat said. You need to be bothered about these things. And it just seems such a shame that a race that they're clearly prepared for and means something to them has kind of slipped away from them because they've not been bothered and they've not been disciplined about putting on layers as they get cold. And I'm going to drift a little bit off topic here, but when we're often asked about what sort of person can do these events, particularly Dragon's Back and Cape Wrath, and there seems to be an assumption that you need to be an elite runner to finish these events, and that is really far from the truth. I would say the vast majority of our runners, certainly the 75% mark, are middle to back of the pack runners if you were to see them at a race. But what they are is they are disciplined, they are focused, they have experience, they are organized, and they are really, really frigging determined to finish. And maybe Lisa was the most experienced of our races as a participant. How does that chime with your experience?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think a lot of the people who do well at these events, they're not the people who are winning flat trail ultras. They're mountain people who've got a lot of experience in the hills, who know how to look after themselves and know how to deal with things when they go wrong, know how to use their kit, are used to being out and are not particularly fast, but are tough and can keep going and want to keep going. Good at dealing with a bit of discomfort for the overall enjoyment. I think there's a value in going a bit slower if it means you can look after yourself better you know, it's multi-day. It's not about racing day one. It's about finishing it with stuff in the tank. So.
Yeah, thank you. And I mean, we've often seen, and I'm going to be very kind of make some generalizations here, but we've often seen kind of younger, less experienced male runners who have gone off really fast on day one, a bit slower on day two, really struggled on day three, and then given up and retired. And we see that fairly often. And it is about kind of calibrating your effort for 6 to 8 days, because going fast on day one makes no odds if you don't finish the event. Maybe at this point, that we are drifting off the topic, we are meant to be really focused on clothing and equipment tonight. So I'm going to ask Eleanor if she would like to jump in, because I have absolutely no doubt there are some questions waiting for us. Eleanor, are you there?
I am here, and we do have a lot of questions.
I thought we might.
Collected. 1 second, let me just bring them up. We've had a lot of questions about what actually happens during a kit check and what happens if something doesn't pass. Are you automatically disqualified, or do you have a chance to fix it if possible?
Stu, you're
yeah,
on the front line.
There's been on many occasions the insulated layers, which is sort of coming out over the last few years, really. That seems to be a bit of a stumbling block for some people. And there's been opportunity, certainly at Dragon's Back, there's been opportunity, and Cape Wrath actually, because you can go into Fort William and you can get something sorted that way. There is a shop there which brings along some equipment, but no, it's not a disqualification thing straight away. We do try and sort of educate a little bit as well and go through, you know, it's not all about finger wagging. We do try and educate you a little bit about, for example, the insulated layer, and it may just be very minimum. I did see an earlier question, somebody sort of said, well, what if my insulated layer is like just under 300 grams? Well, that's fair enough. And I think one of the replies was it might be a sizing thing. So for Lisa and Kat, the 300 gram layer might be 295, 260, whatever. But for them and what they're doing, and then Lisa was saying she takes 2. That's fine. For me, it might be 300 odd grams sort of thing for my sort of size. So no, it's not a disqualification thing. It's not about a finger pointing thing. It's about, and hopefully there's a chance to rectify it before you sort of set off. There's a little bit of discretion, I guess, as well, in that what you've brought might be sort of suitable for you and what you've tested, and we can sort of recognise it as something that we go, yep, that's fine. But ideally, insulated layers, that's a bit of a topic of discussion, really, isn't it? But basically, it should be like a bit of a sleeping bag for yourself, for your body. I think Kat mentioned earlier it's the Fireball or Fireball Light that you've got. I've just been working in a polar region, so I was using like a minus 35 jacket. You know, if you use that on the Dragon's Back, there's something gone a little bit wrong there. That climate change thing is happening there, isn't it? And a Fireball Light or a Prism or something like that is, Prism for me has been a go-to work jacket since I tested them first for Montane over 10 years ago or something. Brilliant bits of kit. I would suggest that one top tip for an insulated jacket is if you can blow through it, it's not an insulated jacket. It should have like a layer. It's like a custard cream, I guess. It's got one layer in the middle. There's a bit of insulation. Generally these days it's Primaloft, however you pronounce it, and then a windproof outer layer that's sort of got some weather resistance to it. If you can blow through it, it's not that insulating. It sort of defeats the object of what you're trying to look for.
Yeah, that's perfect. Thanks, Stu. I'll just add into that. In terms of the kit check, we don't disqualify people if they have the wrong items, because you haven't started the event at this point. But we will be very firm and not finish the registration process if you don't have the right kit. But we will do everything within our power to help you out. I've actually sold the jacket off my own back to a runner at kit check before, so that the runner can get through kit check. So we will help you out. And the principle we have throughout the whole event, so generally Dragon's Back, Cape Wrath, every day that you start, you'll be spot checked for an item or two off the kit list. If you don't have it at that point, there will be consequences. But if you realise you lost your gloves on the hill the day before, you lost your compass, these things happen, they fall out of a pocket. If you come to us with the problem and say, hey, I've lost this, or I can't find this, maybe somebody else picked it up, we'll help you out. You won't get penalised for that. So it's a really simple process. If you come to us with the problem and ask for help, we'll help you. If we find you bending the rules, breaking the rules, then we take a different approach to it.
There's also, on just off the back of that, there's also a good chance that it's being picked up by somebody travelling along behind you and brought straight into lost property, and you get your own kit back, which is also a win-win because it fits.
Eleanor, what's the next question?
Next question is, someone's asked her, should they bring a water filter?
Kat, outdoor professional in North Wales, what would you say?
So there's most parts of the mountains I won't actually use a filter. I'll just go to the water source, and where it's flowing at its fastest, I'll filter from there. Naturally is a natural spring, and then just make sure, like, look around, make sure there's no dead sheep around or anything that doesn't look alive in the water stream or further up above. So check for that. But as places are getting a lot busier, I have started to take a filter with me. And that's just because there's a lot of rangers. As people do get busier, they don't know. It's just educating people. They don't actually know where to go to the toilet. So some people will do it quite close to a water stream. So when it is really busy, you just don't actually know it's going to be in that water. And as well as that, with dipping, there's a lot more body fluids and sun creams. They're getting into the water sources as well. So I'll always carry a filter just for that. It's also really good. Say now you've got very, very minimal water accessible, and it's a little bit dirty. They are actually really good. If you can get some really good ones. You do have to pay quite a bit of money, but they are worth it as a piece of kit if you're going to use it. So it's very personal again, and I do and I don't.
Lisa, what's your experience? Maybe kind of Cape Wrath and Northern Traverse are different again, aren't they? What would you say?
Yeah, and I mean, Dragon's Back was mostly okay for water. I think you have to check where you're going and where the water sources are on the map. I mean, that's why even if you're going to navigate by a GPS line, it's really helpful to look at your map, see where the water points are. I think there are 2 in the day now on Dragon's Back. So actually, I didn't fill it very often. Cape Wrath, the longer days, you don't get access to it. Do you get a drop bag now? I'm not sure.
No drop bag, no water point.
No water point, no drop bag, and it's lower lying terrain mostly. You're not going over the tops of mountains so much. I mean, obviously there's lots of water in Scotland. A lot of the water is very good. I do tend to carry a water filter. Mostly I've got one that fits into the top of my normal Salomon bottle, and I really like it. I don't have to think about it. On a multi-day event, I don't really want to risk getting a tummy problem. And then Northern Traverse, again, a lot of farmland that you're going through. Actually, I just carried a bit more water on Northern Traverse, because even in those lower lying farm fields, even with a water filter, I really didn't want to drink some of that water. But I did on my recce's, I did look out for taps. So there are, cemeteries are quite good. They've often got a tap for watering the flowers. That you do see them; they are around. So that's a good thing to look for in your recce's. But yeah, short answer is yes, I do normally carry it, but I don't always carry it depending where I'm going.
Eleanor, where would you go next for questions?
So this is actually slightly off topic of kit, but it's still relevant, and that's, what snacks do you bring and how often do you go for them? I guess Lisa's probably a good person to ask first about this.
So usually I go for one thing an hour, and a thing is normally about, I guess, 200 calories. But you just really need to get used to that, and everyone will be different of how much they need to eat during the day. So one guy I ran very closely with on Dragon's Back, he only ate gels, which I was amazed by. It was very organized, and he just had 1 gel per hour, and he did really well. But that wouldn't work for me. And I presume he was very well trained for his body to tolerate that. For me, I like real food. I have sandwiches, I have pizza. Variety is good for me. And like I said earlier, that chocolate and sweet stuff, I've got a really sweet tooth, and I know my body to really tolerate sugary stuff really well. So actually by the end of day 5 and 6, I pretty much put myself only onto sugar just because my stomach was bored of real food. But you just have to get used to it and practice and try things out.
Stu?
I was just going to say on Dragon's Back that obviously you're going past some shops, and the famous one is in Cunliffe, where you go into the co-op in Cunliffe and it's just rammed with people in lycra, feeding frenzy. It's amazing just watching people in a Gail Winton and supermarket sweep have got nothing on these people. Just everything from fruit to tomatoes to all these weird concoctions that people sort of go for as real food, as Lisa was saying. It's great just being a people watcher in there sometimes.
Excellent. And Kat, do you want to add anything to that about kind of hill food?
Yeah, I eat proper food as well. So pretty much similar to Lisa. I love bagels. So I love like a good bagel with peanut butter on it. Yeah, so bagels, cheese as well. So I like Baby Bells, and then sweets as well. My stomach doesn't really tend to stomach gels well. Again, it's what you train to eat, and I tend to eat every 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Just something of some sort. So 45-minute rule.
Brilliant. Eleanor, where next?
So we've sort of touched on this a bit, but someone's asked, is it common for people to bring different shoes for whilst out on the hill? So I'm guessing if they're thinking, is it common if people bring a different pair of shoes in the resupply bag, for example, because it looks like a lot of people change theirs depending on terrain?
Lisa, I think you've kind of mentioned your approach, haven't you? But maybe you'll have chatted to more athletes as a participant. So what's your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'd put my spare pair of shoes, which I think is sensible to have because you don't know when you're going to have a disaster and the sole's going to fall off, in the drop bag, because I felt that was the most useful place for them to be. If I was going to need them, that was where I was going to want them. So that's where I put them. I did actually change them on day 2. I wasn't planning on it, but I was feeling that the shoes I was wearing in the morning just weren't giving me very good grip. So I just switched to my other pair of shoes for the afternoon. But I don't know. Yeah, it depends. I don't think you really need to if you're getting on with your shoes, but I probably would put them there in case of emergencies, or if you just need to change something up to make you feel better.
And then I've got another question, which we'll start with Kat and then we'll go around. But what is your one most essential piece of kit?
One most essential. Oh, that's really tough. Because I don't actually have one essential piece of kit.
If you had to choose.
It depends. If I was going to be on like, for me, I love food, so I guess I'd go with food. From that, but if it was for a personal thing, in terms of otherwise, it would be waterproofs. It would be my waterproofs. Would have to be my essential piece of kit from a sensible point of view. But if it was me personally, it'd be food.
Right,
Excellent.
I've got one for that. I think a windproof jacket and/or 2 windproof jackets is an essential piece of kit. My essential piece of kit. I see a lot of people wearing waterproofs when it's not raining, and then wearing a windproof and possibly another windproof over the top of that. Is for me is my go-to. So I have, and they, the sort of size of an apple, the Montane Vertex Quantum thing is very, very small to take 2 of those. And my waterproof jacket stays in my bag until it is really, really. I'm starting to build an arc, basically.
And Lisa.
Yeah, I don't really know how to answer this, to be honest, because so much of the kit is essential kit, and you kind of need all of it. You need to have everything in your bag. So, yeah, I guess having the food that you want to eat. I mean, I don't know. It's a hard one. I mean, I think just love all of your kit and look after it. I don't know.
Can't argue with that answer.
Definitely. I've got another question that's just come in, which I think is aimed at Lisa, and that's, Was there any piece of kit that you saw another participant use that you were really jealous of and would take again if you were to do it again?
Oh, I don't know. It's only ever food envy that I get, to be honest. But then when you're running with people, that people are nice and share with you anyway. So that is the most common food envy. Or really good gloves. I get really cold hands, and so sometimes I'm always seeing what gloves people are wearing. I really like those Innovate sort of mitts that are slightly insulated and waterproof. They're my kind of go-to mitts. But I've actually got an even thicker, more badass pair that I take when it's really, really horrible, because if you've got cold hands, you can't do anything. You can't put your jacket on, you can't eat your food, and it just makes you miserable. So
yeah, absolutely.
Maybe that answered the favorite bit of kit question.
Right, and again, this one's about shoes, but someone's asked, would you use Gore-Tex or waterproof shoes? So I'll start with Kat.
No, I don't. I personally never wear Gore-Tex. When I get it right, my feet actually do end up running really warm. So especially in the time of year that you're doing some of the races, such as the Dragon's Back, I find especially through summer that I get really hot feet. And then as well as that, it's either water getting into it, or if you're falling into bog and then all of the bog gets into your shoes, I find that it all pools into the bottom of my shoe and then it stays there. So I never go for Gore-Tex waterproof shoes. In the winter, I'd consider getting myself a waterproof sock. But that's only on like really cold days where I'll put a liner underneath them as well. And that's just for extra protection, whereas I personally never go waterproof.
Yeah. Stu, do you have an opinion on Gore-Tex shoes?
They don't work. That's it, really. I would rather have something that sort of a decent pair of socks. Somebody mentioned waterproof socks and things like that. Decent pair of socks, and the water just flushing in and out, and get wet feet. And then deal with wet feet. Sort of train yourself to deal with your feet. Gore-Tex shoes don't really work. And for certainly a lot in Cape Wrath, you'll be going through quite a lot of rivers. It just goes over the top. When I worked in a chain of outdoor stores, just during Storm Desmond, people used to come in and sort of say, are these boots waterproof? And I said, yeah, to about there. And then there's a big hole at the top, and it just all flows through. Try wellies, and they weren't impressed really. I think it's become one of those generics, almost a generic phrase. I would do quite a bit of work with military guys, and it's just put your Gore-Tex jacket on, and that they sort of know what they're going to be putting on. They don't know why they're putting it on; they're just being told. And I would use shoes that are able to flush water through really, and therefore they drag quite quickly.
Would you agree with that, Lisa?
Yeah, nothing more to add. Your feet are going to get wet. You just have to get used to it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've got a final question here, and that's, what's one piece of kit that is worth spending extra money on? So I guess it's similar to the essential piece of kit. Kat?
Ooh, again, that's a tough one, because there's a few things which are just worth spending a little bit extra on, just for comfort. I'd actually just go with waterproofs. Get yourself a really good pair of waterproofs. Something that's breathable as well. It's worth paying that little bit extra just for it to be breathable, especially if you're running in warmer conditions. Yeah, I'd go waterproofs, because then otherwise it'd be an insulated layer I'd pay a little bit extra for, just for that extra warmth and that comfort. That would be my second one personally. But otherwise it's a bit hard when you're using the kit as much as you are. Like you're gonna be trying it now, you're gonna be going out on your training runs, it's always better just spending that little bit extra on that kit anyway, because you're going to be using it for those prolonged periods of time, and it's that whole like being comfortable whilst being uncomfortable at the same time. It's one of those things where it's always worth just spending that little bit extra on most of your kit really.
Yeah,
and you get better quality kit then. It's expensive, but it's worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Stu?
I would go with what Kat said, and I would also think about training with your sleep systems. Maybe think about the mat that you're sleeping on. Is it a foam mat? Is it an insulated sort of blow thermarest type of mat, or that sort of thing? Because that, you hopefully that's where your recovery time comes in. Most people are sort of training with all sorts of various bits of kit and trying testing this, that, and the other, and we sort of forget about that the recovery sort of side of it. And I think the sleep side of it is super important. Obviously, I don't need a lot of beauty sleep, so I don't practice that very much. Hey, don't do that. Yeah, so I would suggest sort of thinking about your sleeping systems.
And Lisa?
Yeah, I mean, I think those are the things where spending a bit more gets you slightly better kit, but I think probably be prepared to spend a bit of money on shoes, getting used to them, because they're the things that your feet are going to be in all the time. I mean, more expensive isn't necessarily better, but you just might need to try a few pairs out before you find the ones that work for you. So
I remember
sport, eh?
I did a 2-day mountain marathon with Vassos, who came into the Dragons back a few years ago, and Vassos is on Virgin Radio, if you don't know who he is, and he phoned me at 9:30 in the morning and said, will it be rocky or will it be muddy in the Brecon Beacons? And I was like, muddy? Why? He said, oh, I'm in Decathlon at the moment buying a pair of shoes because my wife found my dirty shoes outside the door and threw them out. So pretty much the morning of the event, he turns up with these brand new spanking shoes. That night, we were camping next to Little Dave and Sean, all kind of legends of career events, and they couldn't believe that Vassos was having to sort his feet out in the tent, sort of thing. As Lisa said, get out, get some shoes, try them, and don't let your partner throw them out before your event.
Great.
Oh, Eleanor, did you break up then?
Oh, probably. I was saying, Shane, I'll hand back over to you.
Okay, right. So I'm gonna kind of wrap it up at this point. We've done 90 minutes, and I think that's probably enough. I'm very grateful for Kat and Lisa's time this evening. Thank you, and for your expertise and insight. Stu, one of our most loyal event team members, thank you for your expertise as well, and Eleanor for working late tonight. Thank you very much. I've got a few final things that I'm going to say. So some of the things that they won't be right for everybody, but certainly as a generalization of having seen thousands of runners, is definitely do not take waterproof shoes, but waterproof socks seem to be quite popular with probably about 50% of the runners. And then sleeping, is have a good sleeping mat, good sleeping bag, earplugs, and some way of making a pillow. That's definitely something I've seen people wish they've got right, or be thankful they have got right. And the final thing I'm going to leave you with is I'm going to give you a bit of a sense of the direction of travel about what we're talking about now. Again, this is 2024 events, so it's not going to affect anything this year, but there is a discussion ongoing now about making our synthetic layer, changing that. So currently it's 300 grams, and we might change it to 400 grams with a hood. So you heard it here first. It's not a done deal. It's not. I'm just sharing a thought that is being discussed in the office at the moment. But the consistent thing we see at events is cold runners, cold runners, cold runners. And we're very keen to avoid a disaster at some point in the future. So we'll wrap up there. Thank you very much, everybody. I'll look forward to seeing some of you at the Scarpa GL3D in 2 weeks' time. I think there's a couple of entries left if anybody doesn't have plans for the bank holiday weekend. And we will end there. So thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thanks all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.